Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. On today's video I have a good one for you. Today I'm bringing you my full review of the vastly updated Nike ZOOMFLY 6. And I say vastly updated because if you've been following along for the last couple of years, the ZOOMFLY hasn't been where the ZOOMFLY needed to be. So with that, let's get into it. Alright, full disclosure, Nike was good enough to send me this pair of the ZOOMFLY 6 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the ZOOMFLY 6 for $170. And of course, I'll place links in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. Now, when I think back of the ZOOMFLY, I think back to the original, because that was probably one of my favorite shoes of all time. It was just so good, and I remember thinking that I never needed to run in another shoe. Then, of course, Nike released a few more updates, shall we say, to the ZOOMFLY, and they just weren't as good as the original. But now I'm happy to say that the ZOOMFLY 6 is actually a really good update. So let's jump right into those specs. The ZOOMFLY 6 has 42 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. Nike claims that in a US men's size 10, the ZOOMFLY 6 will tip the scale at 9.3 ounces or 265 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 11 ounces even or 312 grams. Now, the ZOOMFLY 6, it is a super trainer. It is an up-tempo daily trainer, so it's made for those faster runs, but realistically, I guess you could use it for a lot of things, and I think that's exactly where Nike is placing this in their lineup. This is made for those faster runs, but you could also use it for race day, and I wouldn't mind at all using this in a race. But for me at least, the good part of this shoe is that it's not aggressive enough where it's only good for race days or those faster efforts. I ran a few easy miles in this shoe, and it felt really good. So before you drop $170 on the ZOOMFLY 6, like, what are some other shoes that you would also be considering? Well, I think we have to consider the Brooks Hyperion Max 2. Now, the Brooks Hyperion Max 2 has 36 in the heel, 30 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. In my size, it weighs in at 315 ounces, so just 3 grams more than the ZOOMFLY 6. In fact, I can't tell the difference right here. But the Hyperion Max 2 will cost you $180, so it's $10 more than the ZOOMFLY 6. Next up, we have the Hoka Mach X2. Now, the Hoka Mach X2 was actually one of my favorite shoes of 2024, and it is a direct comparable to the ZOOMFLY 6. So the Mach X2 has 42 in the heel, 37 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. In my size, it'll tip the scale at 293 grams, so that's 19 grams less than the ZOOMFLY 6, but it'll cost you $190. And finally, the shoe that I think is the most comparable to the ZOOMFLY 6 is the New Balance SC Trainer V3. Now, the SC Trainer V3 has 40 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. My size tips the scale at 329 grams, so 17 grams more than the ZOOMFLY 6, and it will cost you $180, so $10 more than the ZOOMFLY 6. And we're going to talk more about how the ZOOMFLY 6 is made, but I think what makes this the most comparable is that we have a lot of padding around that heel collar on the SC Trainer V3 and the ZOOMFLY 6. When I'm running in the SC Trainer V3, I have the same feeling that I do in the ZOOMFLY 6, in that the shoe is pretty much good for anything. It's comfortable enough that I can wear it for easy miles, and they are peppy enough that they feel good when I pick up the pace, and I would consider racing in both of these. Okay, so let's get started at the top and work our way down. And yeah, you can see that there is a lot of padding around this heel collar. It's got that comfort of a daily trainer, at least when you put your foot in. Now, I think Nike maybe could have shaved off a little weight by reducing the padding around the heel collar, but I gotta say, I'm not sure it would be worth it. I really like the comfort of the ZOOMFLY 6, and I think this extra padding around here plays a big part of that. The heel counter of the ZOOMFLY 6 is very rigid. You are going to get a lovely heel lockdown, and I didn't experience any heel slip. For those of you that may experience heel slip, we do have that extra lace hole in case you wanted to do the heel lock. The upper of the ZOOMFLY 6 is a dual layer woven mesh. It is really nice to touch, really nice to look at, and it's super breathable. There aren't too many overlays to speak of. Of course, we've got the swoosh on both sides, got that overlay coming around the toe bumper, and then of course some heavy reinforcement right along the eyelet chain to protect those laces when you cinch them tight. Now, this is going to sound crazy, but I think my favorite part of the ZOOMFLY 6 is the tongue. I think this is the tongue by which all other tongues need to be measured. And look, I know that's a very individual opinion, and I say that because the tongue just works well for me. It is super thin, but not too thin. They've got padding in all the right places. So it's like wispy here on the top, and then the padding starts, and the padding is just all in place. I don't know if that makes sense at all. But sometimes when a tongue is overly padded, it feels like a lumpy pillow, like the padding isn't evenly distributed throughout the tongue. That is probably the exact opposite of what I experience in the ZOOMFLY 6. I just really like it. Now, there isn't a lace loop on the tongue, but it is gusseted on both sides. In fact, more than that, the tongue is actually tied into the lower layer of the dual layer upper. So what I mean by that is the tongue looks like a normal tongue right here on the top, but I can actually stick my finger down just a little bit, and I can move my finger all the way down to the toe of the shoe, and I'm in between that lower layer, which is a little softer, that bit that your foot goes against, and then the very light breathable upper that you see on the top. So while it is very much a traditional shoe, a traditional fit, it almost fits like a little booty when you're putting your foot in, because the tongue is tied to every other part of the shoe. I was also very happy with the laces. You know, they do their job. They didn't come untied once, but they also feel quite smooth, which is usually a little disconcerting in the beginning because smooth laces can sometimes come untied, but not in this case. They worked incredibly well. While I'm still wasting your time talking about the laces, I do just want to show you the aglet. Look at that. It's actually checker black, and I guess that's an indication of the speed of the ZOOMFLY 6, or at least what Nike wants to be a speedy shoe, because they're kind of indicating that you'll be getting the checkered flag when you run in this shoe. I guess. I mean, that's how I interpreted it. Okay, so let's come down to the midsole. Now, this is actually a pretty exciting part. I know I said the tongue was my favorite part, but I can only say that the tongue is my favorite part because I'm so confident in every other aspect of the shoe. And for an up-tempo shoe that could possibly be used for race day, the midsole counts for a lot. So we do have a full layer of ZoomX, and that is right underneath your foot. Underneath that ZoomX is a full-length carbon fiber fly plate, and then on the lower part, beneath the carbon fiber plate, we're using Nike's SR02 midsole foam. It's an EVA, and that SR02 foam is going to give the whole package just a feeling of security, a feeling of stability. Now, of course, this is a neutral shoe, but the slightly denser and firmer foam on the bottom just makes the shoe flow very nicely, and it will make it last a lot longer than a shoe with just ZoomX. And at least for me, it seems like Nike really hit the sweet spot with the ride on this, at least for me, because it's not super squishy. When I say super squishy, I'm thinking of a shoe with full ZoomX, something like the Vaporfly 3. Like, that is a super squishy ride, and can also be a little unstable because of that squish. There is none of that stability in the ZOOMFLY 6 because of this denser foam on the bottom. Now, because you do have that denser foam on the bottom, the ride is going to be just slightly firmer than maybe some other shoes that just have ZoomX, but that's also a good thing. It contributes to a sense of ground feel and really encourages you picking up the pace. The carbon fiber fly plate makes the shoe fairly rigid. I mean, it's fairly rigid, although you can see I'm bending it right there. It seems to me that, this is the first time I've actually Either way, it's a great and very fast feeling ride. If we come down to the outsole, you can see we've got a full amount of outsole rubber coverage here on the forefoot, got the two little bits strategically placed on the back, and a big open void of exposed midsole foam with the fly plate right in the middle. Now, if I look at my outside heel, yeah, I tell you, it's standing up surprisingly well. Now, I've put more miles in the ZOOMFLY 6 than I usually put into shoes when I'm testing them, so I did expect a little bit of wear. And yes, I am seeing a little bit of wear here in the back. In fact, those little nodules that are on all the pieces of tread have totally worn down on my lateral heel edge. But if I didn't know they were there, it doesn't look like the actual tread has worn down much at all. I certainly don't see any wear on the midsole foam on my outside edge, but maybe that's not surprising because I do tend to run a little faster in the ZOOMFLY 6, and most of my runs in this shoe were workouts. Now, as far as the fit goes, the ZOOMFLY 6 fits me true to size. I'm wearing a US men's size 13. I wear a 13 in all Nike shoes. But as you know, Nike tends to be known for making fairly narrow shoes. And I actually have to say that I felt like my feet had plenty of room to move in the toe box of the ZOOMFLY 6. Now, I also have to say that I do have fairly narrow feet. But if you have narrow feet or medium to narrow feet, I think the ZOOMFLY 6 would actually fit you quite well. At least I will encourage you to try them on, even if you've tried other Nike shoes and they've been a little narrow. Yeah, just back to the ride for a second. I think I've already expressed all my thoughts. But yeah, the ZOOMFLY 6 is fairly good at easy paces. It's excellent at picking up the pace for whatever you wanted to pick up the pace for, whether that be like a moderate intensity run, intervals, tempo. And yes, the ZOOMFLY 6 would definitely be a good race day option if you didn't want to spend that $250+ price tag for a race day shoe. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I know I'm just a little late getting this review out compared with some other reviewers, but have you worn the ZOOMFLY 6? What are your thoughts? Or if you haven't run in them yet, are you thinking of picking up a pair? Let me know in the comments. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of Nike's ZOOMFLY 6. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days. No other shoe brand brings out the haters more than Nike when someone actually likes them. I gotta say, I'm really a fan of this shoe, and I would definitely encourage you to at least try it.